Welcome to Heart Talk. I'm your host, writer, educator, and creator, Tracey Michae'l. In her book, Nejma, a collection of poems, Nayura Waheed writes, I want work that is a relentless oasis. It's been my experience that most creators, artists, storytellers want to arrive at a place where their work becomes a salve, where the work touches us first as the creators and then the receivers. Even Robert Frost once said that no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. And I think sometimes what gets in the way of that is the unwillingness to embrace new information, to go a little bit deeper. And some of that resistance is likely from not believing that we are worth growth, believing that we're not enough. What makes some of us believe that we're not enough, that we are not worthy to grow and become our full actualized selves? See, I find that too many times we choose to ignore the things, people, circumstances, lessons that come our way to help us grow and flourish out of fear. Yep, that good old fear. For some of us, ignorance really is bliss. See, we think if we stay stuck, if we choose not to embrace new insights and new revelations, new information, then we don't have to be accountable. Because of course, once you know better, the onus is on you to do better. I've often wondered where that resistance comes from. If you've grown up believing that for some reason you're not worthy of better, then I imagine the prospect of living your wildest dreams, living beyond what you can imagine, is scary. See, fear has a way of locking us in. Even worse, fear is contagious. We too often pass that fear on to our children, to those in our spheres of influence. But hear me, sis, bruh, you are enough. Open your heart and your mind to your life, not the one crafted for you by your parents, not the one determined for you by society and cultural norms, not even the one that you yourself have manufactured to appease the people you think you should. No, your real, authentic life awaits you. Embrace the truth of your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I promise you, there's freedom in that. I am super excited about this episode and this interview that's coming up, because so much of what I've just said is what we talked about, embracing the truth. The fact is that sometimes what you don't know can hurt you. I had the wonderful opportunity to chat for a good while with Adrienne Carwheel. Adrienne is a speaker and wellness advocate and a friend of the show. She's also a holistic health educator who supports individuals on their health journeys to be well. She helps her clients confront poor nutrition, lack of sleep, stress, toxins, and lack of movement, all of which have an impact on a person's ability to really show up for themselves in the world and to believe that they are enough. Adrienne is actually launching her own podcast, Holistic Crosswords, on January 15th. So I'm encouraging the Heart Talk fam to get out there and support her and support her work as well as the podcast. Holistic Crosswords will address everyday health problems that particularly women face, with a chief goal of empowering women with options. And there are options. So We're going to dive into this conversation. Adrienne has a powerful story that she shares with us. We've all said it. If you've lived any significant length of time, you found yourself saying, if I knew then what I know now. So there is often an internal understanding that knowledge and new information makes us better. It's just a matter of whether or not we can deal with the resistance, whether we can deal with a believing that we're worthy of that. And so let's dive into this conversation with Adrienne Carwheel. Hello, Adrienne.
Hey, Tracey. Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa. Yeah, it is Day 4.
So I wish it was Kuji Chakalia because I like to say it, but what's today?
Kuji Chakalia.
Self-determination.
Right. No, today is
Nia, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Purpose. Look at God.
Well, all right.
Well, as we do at HeARTtalk, we always ask our guests, how's their heart today? So, Adrienne, how is your heart today?
My heart today is buoyant.
Ooh, come on with the words.
Yeah, it's light today.
Wow.
2019 was a good year, and I'm looking forward to 2020, and I'm going to lay my heart out today with you. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm excited. I'm so excited. Okay, cool. Buoyant, light. I like that. There's so many different ways. Floating. Not way down. Free.
Yep.
Hey. Okay. We can do buoyant. I can do buoyant.
It's my heart.
Yeah, it's your heart. You got that right. I want to open up with just letting the audience know that we are taping this at Heart Space, which is the brick and mortar space where New Season Books houses all of the things that we do. And so if you hear a little background noise, little folks talking in the background, that's because it's community and we're popping. So that's, I want to let the audience know that. And I just want to open up with, okay, so I run into a lot of people, Adrienne, who know what they should do, but for whatever reason is resistant to doing what they know she did. And then this is across all subject matter, right? So they know that they shouldn't eat that last Oreo, right? I'm talking about myself. Oreos are going to come up a lot in this podcast. I'm just letting you guys know.
And she didn't offer me any yet, so we'll see how this goes.
But you got sweet potato pie. You got hubby's sweet potato pie.
Thank you, Will.
But, and so there's this idea that we can two things, either we know something and we make the choice to not act on what we know, or we don't know something, like we're ignorant for whatever reason. We just haven't come across the information that we need to do better, to be better. And we, for whatever reason, end up being harmed by that, right? That lack of information. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that because I know you have a story that kind of covers that topic in a number of different ways. As a creator, as a writer, because that's what this podcast is about. And no matter how you define creator, because I view you as a creator, Adrienne. You create opportunities for people to be well in a myriad of ways. I do see you as that way. And so I think no matter what kind of creator you are, I think in order to be effective, you have to be open to your life. You have to be open to getting new information, growing. As a writer, I am drawn to different stories, different methods of telling stories. Like I could watch a show like This Is Us and be like in my feelings. Like my husband walks in and walks out the room because like, I'm like, I'm so excited. And it's because the story is so good, and so I get excited about that. And we hear about painters or dancers who go and they study under a particular method, or they go and they study under a particular mentor. And it's not because they weren't great beforehand, but they know that when they learn more, when they know more, when they study more and they study their craft more, that they become better at what they do. And even outside of the creative world, I think sometimes I just get frustrated because I see people who resist new information. I mean, even in my faith tradition, we see people who are almost afraid to learn more about new theologies or new ways of looking at scripture because they somehow feel like it's going to take it from them. And I know deconstruction can be hard in anything, deconstructing the way we think of wellness, the way we think of our health, the way we think of our faith, the way we think of our relationships, but it's the way that we grow, I think. And so I just want to start off by that was my little introduction. I want to start off with just asking you, why do you think people are so either comfortable in their ignorance or just comfortable with not knowing, especially when it comes to information that can facilitate their healing, physical, mental, emotional healing? Why are we so resistant?
That's a great question. I think that, I guess I can start with myself. I don't think I've ever not pursued my own healing. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life, even when I wasn't ready for it, that I wasn't searching for a way to be well. And I think sometimes people struggle with maybe not knowing information or pursuing information that they don't know and not having the tools that they need to work through that thing. So if, for example, they have a difficult situation or something that's unknown to them that's, brought into the forefront, sometimes mentally, physically, and emotionally, we're not ready to handle it. We don't have the skills to face it, to look at it and deal with it. And then the aftermath, like when you find out information, I mean, in my own situation, I was adopted at birth. Talking about This Is Us. I mean, I am baby Randall. It wasn't a fire station or anything dramatic like that, but it's a very significant story, and I had to weave through and peel through and fight through the layers that it took, and at different parts of my life, different times in my life, I didn't have the tools. And so I think in other people's scenarios, they're resistant to change because it's scary, period.
Yeah. And fear is sometimes all consuming, overwhelming, and it keeps you stuck. It keeps you in one place. So are you saying that then maybe my question is coming from a privileged standpoint? Yeah. Because I have the tools?
Yeah, maybe you have the tools are emerging, and that you're absolutely willing, not only for yourself, but for the people that you care about, the people in your community. I mean, we are in heart space. So it's dealing with matters of the heart. You start your podcast out with, how's your heart?
Yeah.
That comes from a person who is ready and available to heal and to encourage others to heal. Everybody's not ready for that. I remember my big sister would always say to me, everybody can't take your stuff. Sometimes I can't take my own stuff.
True.
When you have to face it and look at it and truly weigh the impact that it takes on your life.
That's so interesting because I think as a person who has spent a large segment of her life, it's almost embarrassing to admit, but seeking validation from other people and coming to that conclusion that not everybody can carry my stuff. Right? Not everybody is willing or able to hear about my trauma or hear about, all the things that I am working through. And me getting really frustrated by that and upset and feeling rejected and having all of that same stuff that comes out of the trauma come up again as a result of someone not being able to hold it. And so I can imagine that if someone can't hold my stuff, they may not be able to deal with their own. Like they have enough just trying to keep their stuff, whatever that is, at bay.
Yeah. You never know what I always look at people who come to parties and they're on the fray or they're on the outside. Yeah. I look at people sometimes and I'm like, you never know what it took for that person just to get out of bed and show up. And so it's helped me to be a lot more gracious, not only with others, but with myself, digging through life and digging through the things that we have to carry ourselves.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good. And I think even as I was formulating that question, I don't think I even thought about that. I think I was just thinking like, people just don't want to grow. It's just like, people just don't want, like,
It's true.
we have, as I say, Beyonce's internet, right? That has a wealth of information that's out there. Right. And so why not? If you want to know how to eat better, just go online and find a diet. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that I recognize comes from a place of somewhat judgment, maybe, or even just, again, wanting people to be better. Yes. But also, like, I think sometimes we can want people to be where we are. And if I'm on this healing journey, right, then everybody need to be on it. Everybody need to get on the train, and not everybody can. Not everybody has the resources. And we can even talk about that. Like, for some of the things that we're talking about in terms of wellness, and I know we'll get into that, sometimes it costs people, and then what does that look like, So yeah, you got me thinking here. You mentioned being adopted, and I want to, since you brought it up, I want to kind of talk about that. Let's talk about the transition from, and you can tell us as much or as little as you want, but like the transition from being in a family, believing this is your family, and then learning new information and how you feel that information, not knowing that information previously, impacted you.
Well, I guess if we're going to do it, we may as well do it, right?
Let's dive in, girl.
Yeah. So, just a little bit of background. I am a child of growing up in the 80s, but I was born in the 70s. And I grew up for 8 years of my life thinking that my mom was my biological mother. And she died when I was 8. A couple years later, I found that was my adoptive mother. And I had no idea that I was adopted. You have no idea what not knowing information can do to a person, what it did to me, and how it impacted my identity, relationships, friendships, how I moved throughout the world, and how it still in some ways impacts me today. So really how I found out, I was sitting at home one day and I get this phone call, and it's these girls on the other line. They say they're my sisters. Had never met them a day in my life. They knew everything about me, where I was born, what my name was, where I lived, what grade I was in. It's deep. And they were my biological sisters. And after my adoptive mom died, they had been looking for me. I had no idea they existed. Yeah. So again, that really shaped my identity. So Tracey, where I was born, imagine adoption records are sealed. So later on, I met my birth mother. I wasn't able to gain access to my records unless she was physically in the room with me, petitioning the court to open up sealed adoption records.
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess if we're talking about healing and moving towards healing, what you don't know can really hurt you. I'm a parent. My husband and I, through adoption, we are in open adoptions with their birth parents. We have told our children from the beginning that they're adopted. That is something that stops with me. The desire to maybe hold on to information thinking it's going to benefit the child. I got firsthand experience. It certainly didn't benefit me living in a family for 12 years and not knowing. There's a healthy way to do it.
What do you say to people who were adopted, who say that they were glad that they did not know earlier, or adoptive parents who say, no, I think it's best that we wait till the child, turns 18 or 21 or whatever the age is that they deem is, that somehow there's this switch in their brain that's going to be different. You've obviously proven that it doesn't have to be a harmful situation, and that it's probably more harmful the other way. But like, what do you say to those individuals who make the choice to not do that?
I think, again, that person is working from a place of maybe not being emotionally ready to handle everything that adoption entails. And yes, you are a parent. You can discern at what point your child can handle whatever situation. But I think some of the foundational truth of where you come from is a right of every single person who is born into this world. You have a right to know where you come from, whether it's pretty or ugly. And to tell or not to tell, that shouldn't be motivated by fear or motivated by not wanting to face. Like, that keeps coming up again in this conversation of not being ready. Well, what are you willing to do to get ready to face these things? Once you ask the question, what are you willing to do? You know, Lord willing and the creek don't rise. I am still healing. I'm still moving towards closure and clarity and information for pieces that I've had to pick up from an identity that almost had to be crafted. Like, once I found out all that information, my mom was already gone. She was already dead. The mother who raised me. I couldn't ask her, where did I come from? Why did you adopt me? What's going on? I had to rely on the people that were left that had fragments of information. And so you build a story, you build a life when the truth could have just be told. And it's not easy. I'm not saying, okay, everyone needs to know every gory detail about every person's adoption. That's not what I'm saying at all. Nor am I saying that it should be, I don't think it should be parent feeling centered. I think it should be child well-being centered. Every adoption is different. You know, there are people that come from horrible situations of abuse and neglect, and they come through the foster care system. That child also, at an age-appropriate time, needs to know their story too. I think there's redemption in all of it.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think even if, you know, you weren't adopted and that's not your story, I think there's some lessons, some nuggets that come out of that, because maybe it's not that you're adopted is the secret, right? Maybe it's something related to some kind of generational issue around health, you know, that, you know, your parents, your mother don't, you know, I come from, and I know my mom is listening. She'll be okay. I love you, Mom.
Hi.
But, you know, I come from families who they go to their grave with stuff. Right. You know, it
used to be celebrated, right?
Right. Like,
what happens in the family
stays in the family. That, you know, that kind of thing.
That's damaging.
It is so damaging because you are not equipping the child with all of the information, as you said, to be able to craft their identities and to be all of who they're supposed to be, even good, bad, and ugly. Right. And so I think, you know, while your scenario that you talked about was around adoption, and I'm going to return back to that in a second, I think this is applicable for people who are just dealing with any number of issues where they're entering adulthood or they're living as adults blind, right? Partially blind, where they can't see themselves fully because they don't have all of the information.
Or the wrong prescription. If you're throwing on some glasses to be able to see clearly, it's blurry and you're walking around bumping into things and bumping into people unaware that you cannot see.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who, you know, mental health challenges even run in their family. Like, there's a generational thing that's happening there, but nobody talks about it. Yeah. You know, it's just, oh, Uncle Pete, you know.
Just slide him a plate under the door.
Right. You know, like, but nobody's actually talking about what that is, how it came to be, you know, and so that the next generation has, you know, they have more information and be able to understand, well, that might be why I think this way, or I struggle with anxiety, or et cetera, et cetera. And so it's so important. That's, you know, why I wanted to talk about the unknown. Can you like elaborate more on the specific harm you think that occurred? So, you know, you found out you're adopted, you have this whole new family, right? This whole new bio family. And I always joke with you, like, it's a constellation where I'm trying to figure, okay, you talk about your birth sister, your adopted sister, or the cousin with the cousin on the other side with the grandfather and the, like, because it's like now you have this expanded, family. And so was there anything that you learned afterward that could have been helpful for you? I don't know, it could have been around health. It could have been around anything that would have helped you on your journey, as an adult.
I think I was very naive in the beginning.
Okay.
I think I just wanted everybody to be together. I was creating my own story. And I think kids who are adopted fantasize a lot about, at least when I found out that I was adopted, I wondered what my sisters looked like because they called me, so this was landline days, MCI and Sprint and all that stuff. I think we just aged ourselves when I said that. Sorry.
So did.
The golders get older, right? But I wonder what they look like. I wonder where they lived, where I would have lived if I would have been raised with my biological family, and what life I would have lived. So I was very naive when I went searching and kind of, answering back to their statements, of this is who I am. And I always challenged that because it was, children that were telling me who I was. And I balked at that. I'm like, okay, you say my name is Adrienne, but how do you know that? How do you know that to be true? Just like any other child that would ask their biological mother, can I see a picture of you when you were pregnant with me? How did you meet daddy? Where do we live? Can you show me a picture of the hospital I was born? All those things that people take for granted, I would fantasize about because I had no frame of reference or context. So I think for a while, I was a floater. And so the biggest harm, talk about the people being on the fray, I was the fray person who would just kind of be a dreamer. I'm still that way, but I think it serves me well now because I have such lofty dreams, but I have a very grounded husband. And so I call him my tetherer. He's like, fly, Adrienne, fly. But let's keep it in context, So if anything damaged me, for lack of a better word, I think it was being naive to think that, all right, once I found everybody and met everybody, let's bring the adoptive family together and let's bring the biological family together and let's have everybody meet and I'll bring potato salad to the cookout. And it was not that story at all. The second thing that it did, I think, is it opened up a world of possibility. You talked about health. Imagine not knowing anything about your medical history. I would go to the doctor for years and I would give my adoptive parents medical information, which had no biological bearing on me whatsoever. It might have been environmental or the nurture part of nature versus nurture. But, was there heart disease in your family, Adrienne? Yes, there was. My mom died of a heart attack. Well, I'm talking about my adoptive mom, and that has nothing to do with my body.
Right.
Imagine just not having that clear picture. And so I think that's why I got into the wellness space. I gathered that information for myself and I found, both of my mothers, my biological and birth mothers, both their lives ended with their hearts stopping.
Wow.
I'm very sensitive about my heart in general. I think that for my biological mother, and this is the hard part of the conversation, and neither one of them are here to tell their story, so I'm going to honor the both of them and be dignified in the way that I talk about them. But my biological mother, she was one of those ones that never had the courage to face what was going on in her heart. And that ultimately ended with her demise. For my adoptive mother, with her heart, when I was 5, we got into a car accident with a semi in the parking lot of this rest stop. And I almost went flying through the windshield. I was in the front. So again, I'm in the 80s, sitting in the front, no seatbelt, and got hit head on by a semi truck. my parents reached for me, and I think that's what saved their lives. They had broken limbs, arms, legs. They were in traction, and I had a tiny bump on my head. That's the only injury I sustained. My mother, however, she was given some medicine, prescribed some medicine for some complications after the accident. And several years later, it caused some damage to her heart, and she died.
Wow.
So it's funny that I'm sitting in Heart Space, and I tell this story, and I never, at least as a woman in her 40s, get choked up, you know. But I remember, not only I remember the accident, not only I remember my mother dying in front of me, now as a grown woman, I look back and I'm like, wow, this is why I do what I do. And it never has become more clear than now.
It's a direct path, like a direct pathway to your purpose and what you do today. Thank you for sharing that. I think what's interesting is sometimes you got me all misty eyed and everything, because I'm thinking, I come from the background of not being adopted, but having a step parent and having my biological father's family, that side of the family, and then having, of course, my mother's family and my stepfather's family. And the interesting thing is, even as a child, you talked about wondering about or fantasizing about the hospital, or, all the things where you might have lived and all of that. And I often think about, and I think for people who are listening, they may have had this thought too of like, well, if I had lived there instead of here, then this wouldn't have happened or that wouldn't have happened. And so I think there is this, I just feel like that there is this transparency that I know I try now to have with my child, right? To be very honest about things as much as I can. And of course, age appropriate and all the, disclaimers, right? But at the end of the day, wanting to be extremely honest, like, mommy's having a panic attack. Mommy's having an anxiety attack right now, and it's because of X, Y, and Z. And I need to do my grounding exercises. Like I have very pointed conversations with my daughter, because I feel like, even in my household, I was just left to wonder and wander and, and pick up little pieces from grown folks' conversations here and there. And
that's why you're such a great writer.
Maybe I don't know. But I think, and I talked about this in a previous episode. I mean, the page was where the page could hold my questions. The page could hold my pain. The page could hold all the things that I needed to say, that I wondered about, that I wanted people to know about. It could hold it. And so I gravitated to that. I gravitated to the arts, period, because the arts was a place where I could express how, torn I felt, or the things that it wasn't allowed to talk about.
Or the groanings of your heart.
The groanings of my heart, very much so. I want to kind of shift a little bit, because you touched on it at the end about wellness and how, just not knowing your medical history. And so now you are this wellness advocate. And this is funny. I met Adrienne about, I guess, 4 years ago.
It was over feet, right?
It was over. Oh,
yeah,
girl. We were part of a life group, and at our church, and or our church at the time, and it was a working moms life group and everything. And I remember our first meeting being in a Burger King.
Yep.
And I remember I was carrying some heavy weights, just things that I was dealing with at the time. And this woman, she's looking at me and she's like, "Can I pray with you?" And she has just such an earnest look on her face. And the one thing that I don't even know if you realize is that you can be magnetic. you know, in that people are kind of drawn to you, and it may be because of, you know, the empathy that you've had to have over the years because of your own story. Maybe that's it. But like, I was very much drawn to her, and then we realized we had a mutual friend. And, you know, it just kind of, our relationship kind of, you know, our friendship kind of came out of that. But, and another meeting, there was this opportunity for
self-care.
Yep. Yes. And, she rubbed my feet.
I don't have a foot fetish.
I mean, you know, so it was like a foot washing kind of thing, but it was the kindest thing that I think I had experienced probably ever. And so I think that you mentioned it here, that you're drawn to helping people be well. And I know you're a wellness advocate with doTERRA. I know you talk and speak a lot about, you know, how people can go on this journey towards wellness, whether that is, you know, eating well, or, you know, taking care of their mental health, or, you know, any number of things, including using holistic practices and essential oils and all those kinds of things as a facilitator for wellness. So how do you make the link? Because a lot of people be like, I ain't messing with no oils. I got some oils that I bought from the man on the corner. He was on the subway. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm not, you know, it's too expensive to be buying food from no Whole Foods. That's your whole check, you know, you know, and it is real talk. But so how do you deal with people as a person who advocates for the wellness of people and women specifically, with that resistance that we talked about in the beginning, and the people just not having the tools? I mean, because here you come with the tools. Like, you're coming with the tools and the resources and all the things to say, hey, I got the information. All you got to do is just want it.
Right.
You know? And so what has been your experience, and how does your life story connect to that?
I think that you have to want to. Simple as that. I think you have to opt into your own health and wellness. So if I have a product to sell, or if I have an experience, you know, if I was a travel agent or whatever, people look for those things. If you want to go on a trip, you Google Disney and you go on your trip. If you want a pair of sneakers, you get a pair of sneakers from wherever you go. But when I ask people, do you want to increase your immune health? You know, do you want to sleep better? Do you want to manage your stress? Do you want to reduce your toxins? Do you want to be well? That person has to give a personal answer for that. And it often means that they have to confront some areas, or I'm asking them to confront some areas that they're uncomfortable with and unwilling to go. And that's a hard sell. It's a hard sell. So I think for me, the community that comes with, I mean, I've been a wellness advocate for doTERRA for 10 years, or for 4 years, but I've been helping people to be well for the past 10. So none of this is new for me, but I try to be very gentle and tender with people and meet them where they are, and to provide simple steps on being well. You know, if there's 100 things that you need to change, let's start with one. Sure, it might be cleaning your house with less chemicals. You know, there was this big sale at Bath and Body Works, and everybody was tagging me on it, and I was just sucking my teeth and rolling my eyes like, y'all know I don't use that stuff.
Right.
But it comes from a place, it's not just because, you know, I don't like the product. It means because using it had an impact on my body. Like my 12-year-old, she put on some lotion. Immediately, she broke out. She went to the mall. Money was burning a hole in her pocket after Christmas, and she bought all this stuff.
Girl, you about to have me on the Oprah beef train. They gonna come. Bath and Body Works gonna come for me.
Okay.
See what had happened.
Works in Bath and Body Works. Blur that part out.
Tell the truth. We truth tellers here. Tell it. We'll deal with the backlash later.
Yeah. I mean, but she broke out, you know, and she has very sensitive skin. That's how I got started in all of this. You know, I have a whole bunch of sensitivities internally and externally. And I have learned I can't change 100 things, but I can change one thing. And that was use products that are naturally derived, use products that are plant-based. And every oil is not the same. Everything that we buy off the shelf is not necessarily good. You know, so it taught me to read labels. It's taught me how to teach my girls how to read labels and how to be cognizant of how what they put in and on their bodies impacts them, and just monitor it, not only from, you know, consumable products, but just everything that we do. As a person who didn't have access to any of that medical information and having to build kind of from scratch, for them, I want to arm them to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible from the beginning.
Yeah, that's good. That's so good. And I think it goes back to what you started the first part of your answer, which was you got to want that.
Yeah.
You got to want that. And I'm not talking about the surface want. Like surface is, yeah, of course I want to be well. Like I don't want to be sick. I don't want to, but like, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to do? Are you willing to not listen to those voices, mama and them, you know, that said, oh girl, go ahead and put that, you know, Crisco on, you know,
or Vicks Vapor Rub.
Vicks Vapor Rub, you know, or whatever, you know. I mean, I'm just getting all the brands. Ain't no brand is going to.
Nobody's going to sponsor us.
But, you know, like, but seriously, like thinking about, you know, putting aside all the voices that we've grown up with.
And influence.
And yeah, you know, and even the things that we, you know, have today that says, you know, that this particular wellness and route is the right route. You know, I want to go back to something though, really quickly. Sometimes when we get new information, and I'm thinking about your mothers in particular, you were talking about your moms, both of them, and the heart issues, right? Sometimes when we get new information, or we grow to a certain point, or we get to a certain point, we can almost have some guilt and some shame around that new information. Or, you know, I've even run into people who say, you know, I'm 50 something years old. I should have done this when I was 30. I should have done this when I was 20. And you get into that shoulda, coulda, woulda, or, you know what, I wish I hadn't allowed, you know, that person to be in my life for that amount of time, or whatever it is. And we get caught up in the guilt and the shame. And it almost, that becomes another obstacle, another stifling point, you know, where we resist new information because, you know what, I don't want to feel that again. I remember when I felt that, and I remember how hurtful. And so not thinking that on the other side of that is healing and growth and development and being better, we're just stuck at the guilt and shame point. I'd love for you to like talk about where you've seen that kind of show up for yourself, and maybe even, you know, how that might have impacted how your mothers, I don't know, their passing, or even just the way they've lived.
So you mean specifically related to guilt and shame?
Yes.
I think just even identifying with this story is very new for me. So imagine from 12 up until now, you know, I've been dealing. I have had multiple reunions with several iterations of family, whether it was biological. I mean, I grew up with my adoptive family for 40 years. And now I'm just getting to the point where I'm embracing the shadow parts of me, the parts of me that hurt, and being okay with it, and being able to fully experience joy. And it is very much a resistance for me, because neither one of my moms, I believe, was able to fully experience joy. So if I'm the kid in the middle and I'm crafting this story, from my perspective, I feel like the irony is not lost on me that both moms' hearts were the focal part of them leaving this life. I think for my birth mom, she carried the weight of placing a child for an adoption? Me. And for my adoptive mother, she carried the weight of keeping that a secret. And, present day, I'm very much a believer that your body, your mind, and your spirit are all intimately interconnected. And your body remembers stuff that happens, and it manifests itself physically when things happen on an emotional level.
I'm a witness.
Yeah, boom.
I am such a witness. Secrets keep you sick. I always promote this book whenever I can, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, because he really goes into the detail of how connected our minds and our bodies and our souls, our spirit are, and how stuff shows up in our bodies. I've lived these last 6 months of my life dealing with health challenges that I can source now. Like they're real health challenges. And I don't want to not say that. They're very real health challenges, but the source a lot of times can be trauma or, things that we don't know, right? Like, things that happen to us that we either do not remember or we choose not to remember or, we're never told. And so then we're wondering why our bodies are responding in a particular way. And then you add on to that the things that we do to our bodies on a regular basis that we don't know, right? The various, chemicals that we expose ourselves to. And like you said, I don't think it has to be, I think it can be simple, right? Like one thing, I think I saw something on Instagram. It was like, just drink 1 glass of water today. Yeah. If you drink 0, you come up,
One sit up.
Take 1 sit up, because, and I've even found I've gotten into spinning now, and I find that just saying, I'm going to get on the bike for 10 minutes, like, is that really doing anything? I don't know. But now I'm up to 20, because once I talk to creators should know this more than anyone. Artists should know this more than anybody because, I struggle even now, 20 years as a writer, professional writer. I still struggle with getting my butt in the chair and writing. I know once I get there and I start, that it's going to flow or that I'm at least going to be able to get some stuff down. But the gap, that transition between my bed and the desk.
That's a big leap.
That's a big leap. Or just the idea of sitting down. And so I can't think of the writer who taught me this, but they said, just commit to 1 sentence. They say, if I get 1 sentence, I've done what and what ends up happening is that daily commitment to myself, my work, my craft, my purpose, my path, that commitment to it. Of course, I'm going to end up writing more than 1 sentence. So I love that you are talking about the simplicity of if there's 100 things you can do to be well, just let's try 1 or 2 and see how that works out for you.
And there's forgiveness in that too. There's grace in the moments where it's not perfection. It is progress. I am not a kale smoothie, kombucha drinking, whatever. I will get down and mess a cheesesteak up in a minute. I'm supposed to be starting this elimination diet January 1st. Shout out to my doctor. But it is not about perfection. It's about listening to your body and simply what it doesn't like. A baby will tell you exactly what they don't like. They will spit it up all in your face.
Yes, they will.
All down their little bib and all in the cracks and crevices of everything. We as adults, we shove stuff in our mouths. We have experiences. We hang around people for the sake of hanging around people. And we're uncomfortable. And it hurts us.
And yet we do it the next day.
And again and again and again and again. Be like a baby. Throw that crap up.
Be like a little child.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and I think 2020 needs to be the season of throwing some stuff up.
Yeah.
And I'm, not to be, vulgar, but I think that there are lines that have to be drawn and boundaries that have to be set. Sometimes those boundaries have to be with people that are even closest to you. or with things that you really, really desire. Like, I've recently, over the last 6 months, you talked about the elimination diet. I've had to go go through this detox process and change my diet and all of that. And I yearn still for sugar. Like, I yearn for the Oreos. But I'm at a interesting place in that I know what that's going to feel like. I know what what kind of flare it's going to cause. I know what it's going to do. And so, what's that saying? The pain of change has to be,
greater than
the pain of staying the same, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I just got to the point where, if I do that, that is going to create an uncomfortable experience in my body.
Yeah. There's a saying that says, nothing tastes as good as being healthy or feeling good feels. So is it worth it?
Right.
At the end, when you know that having this thing, when you've tasted better, when you've nourished your body and fed your body better, or had better relationships, or better conflict resolution, or better, interactions at work, or better movement of your body, how wonderful that makes you feel. And then how the converse doesn't make you feel as good. But just taking one of those things and walking towards being well.
Ooh, something just came to me. You nailed it. Like, you nailed it. But I think what might be the problem is people don't know what joy feels like. And I can speak to this because I've just figured out and I'm 44 years old. I've just figured out what joy feels like in my body. Like, of course, I know I've been happy. I've had great experiences. I can cerebrally and intellectually think about the moments that were really good for me. But what I've been working on in therapy and actually trying to have that experience in my work when I'm writing or whatever, is like, what does joy truly feel like in my body? Because when you say things like, feeling healthy, I think that there's a lot of people who just don't know what feeling good and feeling healthy and feeling joy and they don't know what that actually feels like. And so I've gone overboard. I've gone all the way left in like taking those moments when I feel really happy and like leaning into them so that I can access them on the bad days.
Creating a mental picture, how your body feels and where you were, where you were standing. That's creating a neurological pathway for your brain.
It is. And I learned about that at EMDR. I learned that, creating a new branch on the tree, so to speak. And I think that's really important for storytellers and for writers and for artists in general, because how do you connect to an audience? How do you connect to a reader? How do you create a character? How do you create a piece if you have difficulty really connecting to that particular emotion or that? And I think that applies for every emotion, right? Like, I need to know what anger feels like in my body. Right? Not because I want to banish anger. I don't think that's what we need to do, but knowing what it feels like and knowing what it does gives us the opportunity to be aware and to be present with it so that we can deal with it. Right? So joy, happiness, anger, frustration, knowing what those things feels us makes us more present and attentive in the work, in the creative work, whatever it is, as a parent, whatever creative activity that we're doing. This is so good. It's so good.
You know what I wanted to say too? Even for the next generation, I laugh at my kids because they watch other kids, this thing on YouTube where they watch other kids playing games on TV. Have you heard of this?
My daughter does it. Yes. Yeah, like opening packages and like playing games. And I'm like, for what though? Yeah.
Part of it is like this, like it cheapens life because you don't get to experience what you feel like when you open up a package. I feel like sometimes that's how people walk around. We are watching other people's experiences, whether it's through social media, whether it's through even just that fear of missing out or that imposter syndrome where we're scanning the world, looking at other people's experiences and not really fully engaging in life ourselves. So I really, for this next generation, I'm teaching my girls at least, it's okay to get mad. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel joy. If you, scream out because something makes you really happy, good. Sometimes, women are socialized, unfortunately, to not feel those highs and those lows. And we're, we're categorized as histrionic or hysteria, to feel it all. Feel it all and live it all throughout your body. So then when it's really good, it's good. And when it's bad, it's all right for it to be bad because it doesn't last always.
Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. So speaking of that, because you mentioned social media and you mentioned like sort of the experiential piece, being able to experience these feelings. And I want to close out by like talking about information overload. So we say, new information is good. Being open to information, being equipped with information helps us grow, helps us develop. But then there's a lot of stuff out there. There's 11, ways to eat well. And there's 50 million websites about, how to be well. And so I think sometimes some of the resistance might come from just feeling overwhelmed. Like, I don't know where to start. Do I do the keto? Or do I do the Atkins, which is the same thing, or whatever?
Nothing
okay, there goes my Atkins and my keto brands right there, and Oreo. They all gone.
Yep. I still didn't get my Oreos, by the way. And the tea has no sugar that's sitting here.
It's honey.
Oh, well.
See.
That's your elimination diet. Mine don't start yet.
And monk fruit.
Oh, yeah, I did put monk fruit in.
Miss Wellness.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot.
But like, how do we decide our own path to wellness? Like, how did you decide that, I'm going to be a wellness advocate for essential oils, or I'm going to talk to people about, their journeys toward wellness and creating, I know you're in the process of creating a wellness experience or package for individuals. You could talk a little bit more about that. But like, how do you decide in the midst of all of this information? Like, okay, we've established I want to be well. Like, I'm like the lady with the issue of the blood. You know what I'm saying? I'm pressing toward the garment. You know what I'm saying? I want to be well. Now what? I go online and they say this, but then YouTube told me this, and then, Adrienne told me this, and Tracey told me this. And so how do we decide our own path?
I think the key word that you just said is our own. And it's simplicity. I think when you pursue wellness, inherent in it is elimination of distraction and noise. And you create kind of your own filter. So if you go out on the internet looking for something, that has to come from a place of stillness and intention, to say, this is what I desire. And it's in that stillness where you can listen to your body. And I'm not trying to be all mystical or anything like that. Like, be still and listen to your body. This is the Black girl meditation. I'm not saying that. I'm saying sometimes we are so fast. We move from one thing to the next and we don't pay attention. We don't rest. And so if we keep it simple and start with some of the very small principles of how our bodies operate, like sleep or like getting enough water, I think some of the basic things that keeps our body running effectively are the things that we should start with. So for me, like, I have these routines where when I get up in the morning, I try very hard not to pick up my phone. So my alarm is on my phone. My calendar is on my phone. My Bible is on my phone. And so is everything else associated with inside that phone. I have to create a boundary that says, I'm not going to pick it up until I talk to God first. As easy as it is to be a wife, a mom, an entrepreneur, a person who works, to get going and moving. And, you only have 8 hours in a day, but to be still. I think that's the key. With my routines, I will, there's a way that I put my house to bed the night before, And then there's a way that I wake up. There's ways that I move my body. There's choices for the things that I put into my body. There's conversations that I choose not to have. There's people that I choose not to associate with, not because they're not good people, but it's just for me, I have another intention or another focus. And then with that simplicity comes clarity on what works for my body. And so I work with the medical professionals in my life that are holistic and integrative in nature to help me to craft kind of like this individual plan for me that works for my body, for my routines, for my wellness. And that's what I try to do with people. I encourage anyone who wants to be well, check with your doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm a person who encourages wellness. I advocate for your own wellness, which is innate. You know your own body. You are the person who has been with you the longest. You know the aches and the pains. And I deal a lot with root cause, where we go back to the beginning. And this conversation, was about the heart and kind of unearthing and uncovering some things. And sometimes it manifests itself physically. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that's difficult to face. And I'm very aware that when I ask people to partner with me, really in partnering in their own health, that it takes time. Mm-hmm. It takes 21 days to develop a habit, but it takes a whole life to develop a person. And so when you come across a person like me who wants you to be well, it's this cheerleader, this motivator who's pushing you along to say, you can do it, you can do it. Oh, and how do you feel? This feels amazing. You tried this. We did this together. Look, in community, what we can do. We're stronger together. But then, the person is in their car like, oh, well, I may as well try the Impossible Burger. There's another sponsor we won't get. Let me secretly, do this thing. And then it's this loop of guilt and shame. Mm-hmm. But I think with simplicity, with routine, with habit, but then also with a little bit of grace, mm-hmm. that is not going to be perfection. Mm-hmm. And walking alongside people and meeting them right where they are and being forgiving of yourself for not, getting it just right every single time, that it is a kind of like a long obedience in one direction. Keeping mm-hmm. the promises that you made to yourself, honoring your body enough to say, I'm going to treat it better, mm-hmm. and I'm going to see how I feel after. And it 100% of the time, for a little bit with elimination and things like that, it might be a little uncomfortable, but in the long run, you will increase your longevity, your vitality, your skin, your hair, your nails, your teeth, all of those things will improve. But even more so, you have committed to yourself that you are worth being mm-hmm. well.
Right. And I think that's a wonderful way to end, because I think some of the bottom line, like root reasons why this is so hard sometimes is that we don't believe we're worth it. Mm-hmm. And that we are not kind to ourselves enough to extend this grace. That's one of the things that for me that I've just been learning is I too have begun this routine. And I love that you talked about stillness, because I'm a firm believer in meditation and prayer. And I'll actually be including some meditations for HeARTtalk. So we'll do a New Year's meditation. We'll do some different things here, because I do think in the power of being still, being present, being quiet, and solitude, and those kinds of things, to help us to get clarity, to help move the noise out of the way, and also just to appreciate ourselves, and to love on ourselves. I think we don't do that enough, because we don't believe that we're worthy of it. And so I think that as a starting point, that grace, that consistency, that just continually showing up for ourselves every day, that we're blessed to be here is the key. And it's like you said, it's our own wellness. It's what works for us. So thank you, lovely Adrienne Carwheel.
You're welcome, friend.
For being here, for blessing these mics, for dealing with all the background noise that we've had, this morning. And I just want to thank you so much just for being you. I hope everyone that's listening will run out to your website or to your social media, which will be in the show notes, and connect with you and bring you in to speak. I'm going to straight up and ask, bring her into your organizations, because I think at the end of the day, she has a heart for seeing people be well. And so if you're a business that want your employees to be well so they can be more, have more productivity, you need to bring her in. If you're a nonprofit organization that want to advocate for the wellness of your constituents, your clients, your whoever, bring her in, and then connect with her on social media. And so you can make sure you get all that good content that she has for you and good information. So thank you, my love.
You're welcome.
All right.
Heart Talk is written and produced by my mommy, Tracey Michae'l Lewis-Jiggets, for Heart Space and New Season Books and Media. Go to hearttalkpodcast.com to learn more. See you next time.